about me. So my name is Raffaella Gozzellino. I'm from Italy, where I took my first master in chemistry and pharmaceutical technology at the University of Parma. And then I moved to Spain at the Faculty of Medicine of the University of Lerida, where I took my master in cell biology, and then I continued with a PhD in the same university. I'm now speaking to you from Lisbon, where I'm a group leader at Nova Medical School, Nova University of Lisbon, where I'm also an assistant professor, and I'm the founder of Diaspora Mundi, which is an organization that leverage the education, the quality of education and the science, mainly in the African countries, with the help of a network that is mainly belonging to the African diaspora. I'm the co-chair of DOTCAN, which is a Canadian NGO devoted to develop ocean technical capacity with African nations. I'm a member of international committees for fund attribution to research projects, mainly in European agencies and governmental entities. And I'm an editor of international peer-reviewed scientific journal. And it's a pleasure to be with you today. So let's talk about the overview of today's session and which are the topics that we will be exploring in terms of role and responsibilities, right? So there are 10 roles and responsibility that we will be talking about: how to build a solid foundation of knowledge, how to design research studies, handling data, communicating research fundings, ensuring research ethics, securing fundings, networking and the collaboration importance, keeping up with the development and updates in the field, and then talk about career development and work-life balance. So let's start though by defining what are researchers, right? So researchers are the people responsible to identify areas in which increase of knowledge is required for an overall advancement of a particular field. And their aim in this is to fill the existing gap in knowledge and or solve existing problems in this area. The researchers do this by collecting, organizing, analyzing, and interpreting data, constructing predicted trends and tendency, as nowadays is very much in use with artificial intelligence, and then provide a recommendation, which can go from the publishing papers to even policy briefs. So the researchers juggle all sort of tasks because they need indeed to improve their knowledge through coursework and do coursework, to do experiments and learn how to do new experiments with new methodology, to review the literature and becoming the more knowledgeable people about the specific topics. They need to continue or challenge themselves to indeed being able to apply to new jobs or promotion, writing the papers and the discoveries that they are having on top of writing the reports, administrative work, grant proposal, etc., while analyzing data and create even data visualization and graphics. So as you can see, there are so many tasks that researchers are doing every day. But let's see the quality of a good researcher. So he or she needs to be open-minded. So often researchers begin a project with an hypothesis or expectation of what they learn. And excellent researchers are prepared to change their thoughts and opinion with new evidence and data. If there is something that researcher cannot foresee, is indeed how direction the study that they are conducting will take. So there needs to be able to have a critical thinking that is of utmost importance as a researcher, because every researcher must be able to carefully examine and test new information during their research project. And every researcher really wanted to improve their knowledge. And it's important to continue, therefore, their education and learn new skills and best practices to then apply to specific fields, and then ensure their research meet the last standard, which indeed is a requirement also to publish in high impact factor papers. Adaptability, so great researchers are ready to adapt their research methods and plan when needed to accommodate new information and findings. And also, good researcher always follow research integrity and do the right thing. So let's see, therefore, which are the roles and responsibility of these effective researchers. First of all, they need to build a solid foundation of knowledge in the field that they are conducting and try to get more visibility and credibility about. So, and this is done by determining areas of research, by searching the literature, by reading papers effectively, and conducting literature reviews to understand the previous research and findings in the area of study that allow that researcher to identify new gaps and find the niche that they can indeed um, use to perform new studies. And how to determine the 4 areas of research. So it is very important to select a research area on topic because this is the very first step of becoming an effective researcher and also to begin your study. And ideally, your research area should relate to your future career path and have a potential to contribute to the achievement of your career objectives. So indeed, what is need to be done is first of all to understand what is a field, what is a topic, and what is an area. So the field is broad and general, such as engineering, medicine, and biotechnology. That are indeed to be the focus of your research, something that is you can generally classify. And then within this field, you narrow it down and define the area. And the area is something that is more focused. So it's a subset of this field. For example, for the broad field of biotechnology, the area may be to focus on vaccines or antimicrobials. And then a topic is a very precise subject of research within the focus area. And it's a statement of what you are trying to prove. For example, in the field of biotechnology, within the areas of antimicrobials, your topic of research could be to better understand the molecular mechanism behind antimicrobial resistance in human pathogens. And once then you are sure to have a manageable topic that is interesting, then you can proceed with a thorough literature review to identify gaps in knowledge and unresolved problems and frame like this your hypothesis of study from which then you will derive your research question. So it's very important, therefore, to be always updated with the literature review because after a general background review on a finalized topic, you need to perform a thorough review of the scientific literature. You need to become the most knowledgeable person regarding that specific topic. And then you need to ask yourself a specific question like, how much information do I need? What kind of information do I need? Meaning, do I need the background information? So maybe you can read the review papers. Do I need more statistics? Then maybe you can enroll in a specific course to improve your capability towards that. Do I need more definitions to acquire for my specific area or research studies that I need to focus on? Or I need to gather opinions from specific experts. So you need then to focus on peer-reviewed article in reputed scientific journals. And this is very important because the better is the journal in terms of credibility and reputation, the most trustworthy is then the hypothesis that you will be able to formulate. So search always the literature that is present in indexed journal. And why index journal? Because those are reliable sources. all quality research is indexed, so you can be using specific databases to access that research, like the ones that you can see over here. So the directory of open access journal, the Scopus, the Web of Science, the Google Scholar, and even specialized database in certain areas or subject areas, like the PubMed or the Science Citation Index Expanded. So when you using a literature search tool, you need to always keep in mind to adapt your search and keep trying indeed what you are looking for, because you might indeed improve every time that you search for your result by changing the way that you are looking for specific information, until you are really happy to have found what you are indeed looking after. And use different databases, because you might have more information when you are inserting specific keywords on special databases rather than more general databases. But also use a track to keep in line your research and save the items that you might then go back and want to explore it in a different way. And these are some research tips, right? So you identify search words because you need to have clear in mind which are your ideas, and you might write them down. You might write the synonyms. You might write related words and phrases. And then if you are looking for particular types of research, you can use these as search words like qualitative, quantitative, methodology, review, survey, test, trend, etc. So be mindful of UK and US spelling variation, such as anemia, written with an A, or anemia, according to whether it's UK or US. So it's one or the other. And use the and between the words, which represent the main ideas in the question, like adolescent and physical activity. So there are some ways that you might navigate and search, narrowing down your search to indeed have better results. But then you need, whenever you are reading the literature, you need also to grasp the research articles in a very effective way. So it's reading the papers is a complete different project that reading an article about science in a blog or a newspaper. You need to be more concentrated. You need to assimilate more information. And it has been indeed an essential way to develop indeed your knowledge and your credibility on the field, because whenever then you might want to argue regarding specific topic, you need to cite the literature that is behind that. So the scientific literature on a particular topic will therefore help you to understand what has been discovered and which are the questions that remained unanswered. Like this, you have certain tools in designing what is the research project that you might want to conduct. And indeed, the most recent articles are organized in the sense that there is a title, so that highlight the topic and the information also about the authors. There is a brief overview of the article, and this is the abstract. The introduction is provided through a background information and statement of the research hypothesis, and then there is a lot of details regarding the methodology, how the study is conducting, procedure that are followed, instrument and variables that are measured, before then entering into the results session, so where all data are presented as figure, table, or graph. And then the interpretation of these data is indeed gathered within a discussion session, which also highlight the implication of the study. And then every article is finishing with the reference and the bibliography, which are the citation of the sources from where the information was obtained. So mostly every article has these research article has this structure, and you can then go through by selecting which are the article that you might want to read the most. So is the title related to the topic you're looking for? Does it have keywords that you have in mind? If not, you simply skip that article and do another search. But if yes, you might want to read the abstract, and then you might want to jump to the conclusion to see whether that article can be used for you to increase your level of knowledge, and then check the aims and the research hypotheses, and whether the conclusion are precise, and if everything you find it relevant, then you might want to read the article. But this kind of approach is helping you not to spend much time in articles that are very interesting, but that are more towards increasing your cultural knowledge, rather than helping you out in navigating through specific scientific question you might want to explore. So, and this is therefore a step-by-step approach that we would like to suggest you. So begin by reading abstract and then skimming the article. So just to try to grasp the essential of the article and identify then the big question. So what is the paper about? What the problem is described in this field that these authors might want to trying to solve? And this helps you focus on why this research is being done. So then you might want to look very closely for evidence of agenda motivated research. Then you might continue by summarizing the background in 5 sentences or less, just for you to organize the idea. So, what work has been done before in this field to answer the big question? What are the limitations of that work? What, according to the authors, need to be done next? You need to be able to succinctly explain why this research has been done in order to understand it. And this allows you, if you get used to write down this summary, then it's allowing you also to coming back to that paper in a more effective manner, because you might just want to read what you summarized before. And then you might want also to identify specific questions, right? Because remember that you are reading, trying to indeed increase your knowledge and help you out in deciding which are the hypotheses you might want to focus on. So you might want indeed to better understand what the authors were trying to answer with their research. If there are multiple questions, and then you might write them down. And if it's a kind of research that tests on identify new aspects of the field. But then you might want also to understand the approach that were used to reply to those questions, reading the method section to see whether you might use that methodology also when applied to your effective research, and then include as much as detail you need to fully understand the work. And then you might want to jump on a result session if you find all of that suitable also for your research, because you might want even to summarize the results for each experiment, each figure and table, and then decide what are the results that are more meaningful to you. Just put them aside in a sentence, because like this you might want then to revise that literature afterwards. And you will often find that there is a lot of attention that you might want then to give to the summary that you are providing, because indeed it allows you to save time whenever then you are in a hurry to decide which are the question of the study that you wanted to address the most. And then, of course, you determine whether the results that you are reading are answering the specific question. What do you think they mean? Don't move, or until you have thoughts about these specific topic. Don't start a new article. Don't start to read a new article, because like this, you are really trying to make the effort to understand the research that has been conducted. And this is indeed a good habit, if you follow all those tips, to start having this critical thinking that an effective researcher needs to develop to interpret the results, even sometime before you interpret your own, you start doing the results of someone else. Because even if the paper are published and means that are passing through a peer reviewing process, there is always something that a different reviewer might have had spotted and requested. So then you might want to read the conclusion and the discussion and what is indeed the interpretation session, and ask yourself, what do the author thinks the result means? Do you agree, or can you come up with an alternative way or interpreting them? Do the author identify any weakness in their study? Do you see any that the authors any results that the authors has missing? Because indeed they might have thought about something else to explore, and what if was you to continue the study, you might propose as next step, and do you agree with what is the next step that is highlighted in the paper too? And then go back to the beginning of the abstract and say, does it match what the author said in the paper, and does it fit within your interpretation of the paper? If you start addressing the scientific literature this way, so then you will be able to also becoming more rational and objective, indeed, also to towards every study, including yours. And at every step, you need to look up any unfamiliar terms. So if you come across some that is not well understood, so then look it up, take your time, and ensure that you fully understand it, and takes notes, because indeed there are many people that thinks that taking notes is something that a very young researcher or a student does, but is not the case. So regardless of your stage of career, never be ashamed or taking notes, because indeed everybody forgets. But if you then go back to the note, there are many different aspects that if you would not have taken notes, you would have missed. So whenever then you need to plan and design a research study, so this is indeed the direction that you might want to follow. So you formulate a question that you have in your mind that is something that interests you, because this is the privilege of being a researcher. You are doing something that you're really passionate about, and then you, on top of your interest, you perform a background research, because this is what allows you to formulate an hypothesis and then design experiments that are going in that direction, and then collect data, analyze the results, and through the analysis and the interpretation of the information that you collect, then you can draw the conclusion, and you can communicate the results in many different ways, including papers. So whenever you need to formulate a research problem, you need to ask yourself, what is the problem? What is the challenge? Or what is the statement about an area of concern, a condition to be improved, a difficulty that you might want to eliminate, or a troubling question that exists in scholarly literature, in theory or in practice, that points to the need for meaningful understanding and deliberate investigation. In some social science discipline, the research problem is typically posed in the form of a question. And the research problem does not state how to do something, but it offers a vague or broad proposition, or present indeed a valid question. So formulating your research problem enables you to make a purpose of your study clear to yourself, but also to the target readers. Because remember that whatever you are working on, it does not need just to be understandable from people of your field, but you also want to indeed raise some interest in colleagues or students that are not working on that, but then might be encouraged to do so by looking at your research. So, and then you need to define the purpose, right, of these research problems. So it's helping ensuring that your project is innovative and unique, and that you are conducting research with an intentional purpose and justification. The purpose needs to introduce the reader to the importance of the topic that is being studied, because the reader is oriented to the significance of the study towards what you are explaining, and the research question and the hypothesis that you formulate, and then there are follow. The purpose places the problem into a particular context that define the parameters of what is being investigated, and provides also the framework for reporting the results, indicating what is probably necessary to conduct the study, and explain how the findings will present these information. So, by formulating a research problem, you are indeed specifying also which are your research objective. And because of these, then you might review the context of your research project, exploring the nature of each problem, and then determine the variable relationship between the different parameters that you are indeed trying to address. And there are three simple steps that you can follow to define your research objective. You might pinpoint the major focus of your research, and then you break down your research focus into objectives, and then you write your research objective in a SMART format. Sometimes there is a difficulty with this terminology, so let's see what is the SMART format. It means that every objective needs to be specific. So being specific about the desired outcome should be clearly written and leave no room for confusion, because these help you to keep all the objectives in a very focused manner, but also the reader to be focused and concentrated, understanding what you want to do. All the objectives need to be measurable, so you need indeed to create metrics that are then essential to measure the progress towards achieving those objectives. And this is very important, especially also in research grant proposal. All objectives need to be achievable, so realistically you need to be able to accomplish what you say, and try to avoid getting overwhelmed by unrealistic expectation you might have about a study. So make sure to have the resources and the budget that allows you to accomplish those objectives. And then of course that your research needs to be relevant, right? So your objective needs to be relevant to the overall goal that is your study trying to achieve. And this can help you to stay really motivated and on track throughout the research project. But also needs to be time based, so you can establish deadlines to help you keep your research process on track. So you can set a major deadline for your entire research project, as well as a smaller deadline indeed for each objectives and task that you might want to accomplish. So what is important to do that? The planning and the managing of the time that you allocate to specific objectives. So planning is a key part for every phase of research. Some tasks are particularly time consuming, but through a proper organization, you might be able to cross over it. And you needed to organize not simple the objective, but those comes from the organization of thoughts, ideas, and data. And this is very essential to achieve indeed the goals that you are proposing, and therefore the success of the study. And you might lose paper you have a scribble on, or you might have lost the post-it note, etc. But try to coordinate the task and input from several members across institute and location. So try to ensure to use specific tools, for instance, that you might also that might also facilitate you to keep focus and to keep track of the different aims and objectives. And you might establish some routines where you are gathering with the colleagues and the student to talk about that and to talk about the future direction and how to better organize the task to be accomplished in a more efficient manner. So how you can optimize therefore the time. So most of the time, whenever you plan your research, this is the pipeline that you might need then to follow. You select the topic of the study you might want to focus on. You identify the knowledge gap, you frame the research question, the hypotheses, you do the literature search, and then you look which is the methodology and the design of the study that better allows you to achieve those objectives before starting to collect the data analysis and do the reporting, which means disseminating what you are finding, right? Describing what are you finding. But there might be some back and forward to revise and refine some steps, because you might indeed be in whenever you are framing your research question, you might have read that there are specific methodology that you might need to indeed use to be completely updated to that. So then you might go back, if you don't have that specific instrument of equipment in your environment, you might go back and formulate the research question in a different manner to then use what you have in house. The same way for whenever you frame a research hypothesis, you might go through the literature and see and do your search and then see that there is something that potentially has been already discovered. So you might want to go back to the research question, to the research hypothesis and formulate it in a different manner. So there is some back and forth, but it is important though to do something that we always postpone because we have the tendency to concentrate just on one thing. But indeed, there are some parallel processing that we can move forward at any time, which is having multiple papers in our pipeline and at different stages of the process. And this why, because if we start writing early, we don't need to wait for the result to start a new project. We might just have something that has been already prepared, a sort of introduction or material and methods, and then if we feed it with the results, then the process will be shortened. And if it's shortened, it will be also less stressful for everybody. So inquire if you don't hear from the editor whenever you submit a paper within 8 weeks of submission max. So then ask the editor whether that paper is still in reviewing process, what is happening that I'm waiting so long, etc. And this while you are working on a different paper. But like this, it helps you also to have multiple projects on your pipeline and therefore optimize your time management. So what means all that? If we look at the scheme that we previously saw, whenever you are starting collecting the data and analyze the data of one project, start writing. And whenever then you are finishing with the writing of a paper, then start writing the other. So don't wait then to have all the story, all the results to then write the paper, because you might always need to perform more experiment for the paper to be finished. So the importance of planning, is something that it relates also with the length of a fellowship or scholarship or research proposal. And this is why whenever you are planning a major publication, you need to do it much in advance, because indeed you need to prepare a grant proposal that allow you to do so. So this is why you are thinking often about some major publication with 3 years in advance. So you plan making sure that everything is productive, everything is where you need, and the impact of the publication will be timely. And then you might want to do that while you are encouraging even your students or your colleague to perform other activities that they might have in parallel, not to get stuck if that project, for instance, doesn't work the way you would like it to be. So, and then you need to handle data, right? So, and this is what means it means collecting information of your experiments, collecting information from your survey, analyzing them, and like this, whenever you analyze the data, you need then to interpret the finding, but also just I mean, first of all, you need to do statistics, right? Which is something that at the university we don't like much to study maths and statistics, but it's very important because you can draw conclusion just if the statistical significance of your results is ensured. And then you might want to look for some visual interpretation of the data, which might be graphs, which might be tables according to what are the data that you are collecting. These are some tools to handle and analyze the data. You can do it in the Excel file. So this is doing simple statistics. Also, it generates summary metrics, customizable graphics and figures, and it's very accessible to everybody. But you might also want to use the statistical package for the social science that is widely used in this area. The R software, so is a free statistical software package, and then there are plugins that are available if you want to analyze the great range of data, and then it's these you might need it. You might want to ask for help if you never use the R, because indeed is a powerful software, but it has a steep learning curve, so it requires some coding, it requires some experts to show you how to use that. There is as well another analytical platform that is the MATLAB, used in programming language and is widely used by engineers and scientists. And then there is the GraphPath Prism, which premium software primarily used within statistics related to biology, and that is a very easy software to use. But there is also stat checks to check a PDF or a docs or a web file for error in statistical reporting. So you might want also to explore this link the same way that you might want to explore some apps that you might want to use to visualize the data, right? So to create a visual representation of large data sets. So and these are some of the tips that have been added to this slide. So it is very important to communicate your research findings because the sharing of the results with the colleagues and also the civil society allows you to present your data through academic publication, through presentation, through other means. But basically, it allows you to make aware the public of the importance of your research. And for that, you need to use communication skills that become more and more essential. And you will see that, but indeed, you need to develop. It's something that you develop over time, right? So you need to take time to increase your ability to write, to speak, and then to communicate results effectively to various audiences. There are audiences that might be so general that do not even know what your biological question might means, for instance. So you need then to navigate through different ways, from more specific to more general, of disseminating your results. And always ensure the highest level of integrity. This is indeed something that is very important nowadays. Unfortunately, unethical manner are, because of the pressure that sometimes scientists have, or because indeed there are many reasons we are not here to speak about, but you need indeed to ensure that every research and every study is conducted in a very high standard ethical manner, including the consent form for the study participants, protecting their privacy, allowing younger researchers to indeed becoming a reference for for the newcomers, so avoid any type of academic fraud knowingly or unknowingly. And it's important therefore to avoid this, that you are the most knowledgeable person, so you need to stay always informed, not simply about the literature review that you are looking for, but also from all the practices that you can and cannot do, which are the various form of academic misconducts, and which are the standard that you are indeed obliged to follow. Sorry. And it is very important to, in order to conduct your research, that you are helping to secure funds. So a researcher needs to secure funds to conduct their study, which means indeed writing grant proposal and then managing budgets. Sometimes managing budgets is done by your university or a research institute, but indeed the writing of grant proposal is something that you need to do. And what is a grant proposal? First of all, so grants are non-repayable funds given out by grant makers, which can be government department or corporation or foundations, to a recipient, which is a non-profit entity, because usually is a taxpayer money whenever then is a public money. And is given to an educational institution, or to start a business, or to an individual in terms of scholarship and fellowship. And to receive a grant, there is a process that is called the grant writing you need to go through, which is refer indeed to write a grant proposal, which is also called a grant application. And these, in this slide, you can see the core parts of a grant proposal. So there is always an abstract, there is always an introduction of the topic, the research design and methods, the preliminary study on which those hypotheses has been formulated and give support to the grant proposal per se, the limitation of the study that you need to highlight, because the people that gives you money need also to be reassured that if you find a challenge, you will be able to overcome it, and the study does not stop because of some limitation. The budget that needs indeed to be very appropriate to the study that you would like to conduct, the personnel that you are recruiting, because all human resources needs to be indeed with the capability and the competence to conduct the study, the same as the research environment you are affiliated, and your institutional researcher resources need indeed to get along with your study, and then some appendices that you might want to add in terms of CV or recommendation letters. More or less, all the grant proposals follow the same structure, although might vary just a little bit across institutions or different countries. And there might be some variation in the sense that there are proposals that sometimes are two-stage proposals. So one stage is a short version, and if you pass then that short version, then you might want to, you are asked to and invited to submit the full proposal. So there might be some variations, but usually are framed in the same way. This means that because of this variation, you really need to follow the rules that in every call from the funding entity are disseminating in their website, and then follow which are the requirements to be able to have a successful submission. And then, of course, there are also conformant rules, meaning that even after the attribution, you would need then to follow the rules that have been advertised before. And any deviation can lead then to rejection or withdrawal of the grant per se. And this is an example of a grant application format. So sometimes the word is different. So overview means an abstract and an introduction. Preliminary means a project strategy and methods. So it means that you need to provide which is the research procedures that you are following to indeed accomplish with the study design, which are the limitation and the expected results and the impact, etc. And then there is always a budget that is associated, and you might need then to discriminate it very well. But there is also usually a session where you describe why this entity would need to fund you as the best person to conduct the study, or your team as well. There are some interesting practical tips for improving grant writing, which is contact the previous grant winner, have early discussion, be prepared well in advance, have early discussion also with your universities, and then build these skills very, very early. So it is therefore very important, as you might have understood, how networking and collaborate with your colleague might push your study forward, because it allows you to build connections, and is essential indeed to also seek for new opportunities, not simply for mentorship opportunities, but also career development opportunities. And the researcher might collaborate with other researchers, with scientists, with professionals to conduct and share fundings, but are always a part of a team, right? So they might need to work in an independent manner because they are autonomous and perform their study, but indeed there is no data that is completely apart from the rest of projects that your colleague might want to also pursue, because in science there is no such a thing as your result and my result, but there is our results. And this might involve indeed a bit of coordination, not simply with other colleagues, but also with assistants or technicians that are supporting the team, and also with the stakeholders, because you might want to interact with the financial entities or other partners that you might have, but also with the community members, because there is the need to show the civil society what indeed the scientists do. Why should researchers network? Because they want to build the career, right? So you need to talk to people in order to show people what you do, and the collaborations are essential to publish. And this is also very important to increase the credibility and the visibility. So you might want to build your presence online and offline, and learn also the latest trend, the latest research and updates, and also having different experiences and viewpoints. And by forging unusual collaboration, you might even take the chance to transition out from academia into industry. And in that case, you need industry connections. So do not restrict yourself just to collaborate with specific partners. So whenever then you might want to look for people to network with, look in scientific database, journal articles, and academic textbooks, so which are the authors. So also you would like to collaborate with university website, conferences, academic blogs, scientific engagement platform, and professional platform, even in ResearchGate and LinkedIn. And do not be ashamed if you don't know that person to request, for instance, an invitation to join their LinkedIn profile, because it's just like this that then you might want to know better the work of that person in particular. So whenever you need to email a potential collaborator and you don't know exactly that person, try to always write a clear subject and then keep short the email, because nobody has the time or the interest to read very extensive emails. But then try to narrow down the content. So do a brief introduction of your recent academic background, the interest, the experience, and why you would like to work with that faculty, and which are your future aspirations, relevant experience, publication, or reference of the people you have worked with. It seems a lot, but you can resume that in 2 sentences. And then try to customize your email. So do not send generalized email like dear sir or madam, etc. So, but try always to put the name of the collaborator that you want to indeed achieve, and then give a time in the scheduling. So consider also the time zone of the recipient. So try to give time indeed also to propose this collaboration for the recipient to consider whether they are interested or not. And then if you are a student, remember that the group leaders have a very busy schedule, so do not wait the reply in the next day, okay? But give some buffer time. And then make a lasting impression via email, saying it simply uh, formulate a simple sentence, so avoiding excessive technical jargon, and then be unexpected and unique. So ask interesting question, make the other person understand that you value his or her research, and then support your email with verifiable credential for whoever he treats it, because it proves your ability and show the success you already have on that field. But then also you might find the collaborators in conferences, and you might want to go to conferences to share your results and to, place your work in the field, here listen the latest updates in the field, and then meet a new collaboration and learn a new tendency, and identify aspect that you might also transpose to your research design, on top of course networking and sometimes finding jobs, because there are many people that are looking and to identify new researcher that might join their lab. And this is very useful for early career researchers to go to conferences, because it's indeed the place to learn. So find the conferences that are relevant to you through peers, faculty, and mentors. Consult academic society you might want to sign in, and then look for meeting or event information. Follow the relevant societies that are broader, but allows you to even contact more people, and try to sign up for a new announcement and update, and then check out the conference listing. You might also want to be aware that sometimes grants are providing support for people that are traveling from far away. So plan it in advance, because this is indeed a scrutiny process, is an application that takes some months. So you might want to download and fill travel grants form and send it after attestation by your guide or department head. You need to write, in this case, applications, and then stating the purpose that you might want to attend to the conference, update a resume, and then having a letter of invitation from the organizer on top of your supervisor, okay? And then you might want to not you might want to, you might need indeed to present the certificate of attendance and the proof that you were selected to present those results. So keeping up with the developments in the field and beyond. So always stay up to date with the developments in the field, which might involve indeed attending conference and seminars, by also reading latest publication, and be updated with the trends on research related activity that might even go beyond your discipline, but they might indeed allow you to incorporate a new field and new aspects into your academic journey. And this means also do not miss the gray literature, meaning the project reports or the policy papers or the commercial reports that are not indexed in the major database and are not peer reviewed, but might be useful for you to take some decision. Always search for images and videos that might clarify potential aspect in your field, and then try always to optimize your search by using combination of databases or by using those conjunction like and or not, and then try always to subscribe for alerts in different type of settings by following also top journals and subject matters expert on a social media platform, and this allows you to be always updated. In terms of career development, try always to be proactive about your career development, because indeed there is always a training and development of skills and opportunities that we can do by applying for grant or fellowship or seek other resources to gain experience in other aspects of the research project. But we can always try to upskill, right, and enhance our CVs by showing we are indeed the best profile that career that vacancy might want to. So always try to improve soft skills, meaning paper writing and grant proposal writing or poster making and presentation skills. Likewise, the public engagement. So and try to advertise and making the most of social media, which are indeed a nice tool to reach the public, and also improve the hard skill, which means the coding, the learning a new programming language, and the working with complex analytical models and data visualization. And in the time frame that we are passing through with all this technology and the digital era we are in, so this is an advice that I hope you might really consider. It is, though, very important to balance between work and life. So try always to find a balance, prioritizing your self-care, making time for hobbies and other activities outside the work, because it will allow you to recharge your battery, and also to set an example, right, for peers and students that doing science is really a privilege. So, and like this, you can also establish a sort of routine to with your peers in order for them to be willing to share problems and seek support whenever then they need. So researchers are indeed responsible for cultivating a conductive environment. So these are some roles and responsibility as a recap of the webinar that we held today. So building a solid foundation of knowledge, designing research study, handling data, communicating research findings, ensuring research ethics, securing findings, networking and collaborating with others, staying updates, career development, and work-life balance. And with that, I really would like to thank you very, very much for your time in enrolling in this webinar. My name is Raffaella Gozzellino. I will now stop sharing my screen and be happy to clarify some doubts and take some questions that you might want to request. Thank you very much. Okay, the first question is, can we use AI to determine the gap for research? Yes, indeed. This is one of the most use that we can do of such a tool, because indeed it might allow us to go in the right direction. Remember that AI is a tool, so you might need to use it as such, but indeed it allows us to narrow down the field that we would like to indeed work on, and potentially finding niches, right? What is also useful to do is to see the limitations of the study, and AI can also allow you to screen for different studies and see the limitation, and you might indeed find that gap within the description of the limitations that authors do within their article. What is R? So R is a software that is used for statistical analysis of data that are, quite some sets of data, and that is something that requires a learning period, because it is indeed is not something that from one moment to the other you might indeed learn. I always advise you to start not simply study statistics at the very early on of your career, but especially to rely on people that are very knowledgeable on that can indeed help you out navigating through those systems that are nowadays used to perform the best analysis that you can do. And take a statistic very seriously, because there are many papers that I saw that do not pass the reviewing process just because statistics. So it is something that indeed it's a serious matter, also because conclusions are drawn on statistical significance. So this is the reason for which you need to really pay attention to the statistical test that you are using. What advice would you give researcher to balance productivity with ethical responsibility? So every researcher, but actually I would say every person has an ethical um, code within, right? We behave in an ethical manner. So, and the responsibility in research is to think, especially that the money that you are using are taxpayer money, mostly, because are people that are indeed making the effort to work and pay taxes, and you gave back something, some results that the society as a whole can then use to influence the definition of public policies, for instance. And you need to think that way. What can you do for the society to be really satisfied with the work that you are performing? So do not look for the positive result, because most of the time even the negative result is very important to define specific direction. You don't need to be you don't need to have the best results that you can get or you can think. You need simply to interpret what you get, because this is how you becoming an effective but also a reliable person. So on top of knowledgeable, think also to be to apply fairness to the results that you are having, thinking how I can improve the message that is transmitted towards the interpretation and the conclusion of the study that I'm conducting. And that way you will never make a mistake, right? Can you send the link for that R website? So R is a free software. You can Google it. You put in Google R statistical software, and you can go from there. But I advise you, if you have a department of statistics in your university, if you have a professor that is working on statistics at your university or is a mathematician, etc., so to indeed request an appointment and ask them how I can learn how to use R, because it's indeed is not an easy software to work with if you don't know anything about statistics. Shortly, step for finish research on time. Well, so I really thank you for that question, but it's not a shortly step that I can say, in the sense that so it's very difficult sometimes to finish the research on time. And I'm telling you this because you never know the direction of your study. You can just hypothesize that it goes in specific direction. You can write expected results on your grant proposal, but indeed you never know if that then would be the case. So in order to finish the research on time, if you are a PhD student or if you are a master student, try always to get involved in projects that are not over ambitious or that you see that are achievable. Try always to agree with your PI. What about if the research does not work out? Because the PI has the experience to value the research, whether it's a long term objective, what he or she might want to achieve. And if so, never do the research alone. Try always to have the advice of senior postdocs in the lab. So, by doing the research on time, you really need to be a very knowledgeable person because you will need to plan ahead according to what the literature say, which is the direction that you might navigate through. So and it's also very difficult question because every experiment might open a new door for new experiment to be conducted, for a new research line to be started with. So it's something that research is something that you start, but you never know when it ends and where and how it ends. It might not be you, it might be the next person that take over your project. So do not be scared if that is the case, because group leaders and PI are always giving the credit to the researchers, right? So but indeed is something that you might want to plan it in advance also with your group leader. My research is mostly qualitative, and I always face from the reviewers criticism the contribution, even though it's clearly stating that it's a qualitative study. So if that is a maybe that is an advice, right? So your research is qualitative, but as you said, is mostly qualitative. There is always a quantitative part in every research that we might think about. If you, for instance, look at the sky and you see that the sky is blue, you might always refer that blue tone with the other blue that allows you to say that today is lighter or today is darker, etc. So if that is a constant criticism that you might have whenever you are submitting your work, try to address a quantitative aspect. If it's not you that you are performing that, try to insert some papers that are showing quantitative aspects on the qualitative research that you are